Welcome, everybody, back to America's Finest Sports. Today, we're going to be talking about week one of the NFL season. Now, there were a bunch of insane games this weekend, and it was actually a weekend, and they kept bringing it up on Red Zone, but kickers couldn't hit field goals for the love of them. I mean, it was ridiculous. But we're going to be going over a few of these games. I want to start off and talk a little bit about this Monday Night Football game. Then we're going to get into the Raiders-Chargers game. Talk a little bit about Dak. I mean, of course, that's got to be one of the crazy storylines of the week. And then talk a little bit about the AFC North and also the NFC North with that Vikings-Packers matchup. So not going to get into every single game this week just because we're going to be doing this stream every single Monday after the game. So going to kind of rotate of who we're talking about. But I feel like these are the teams right here. These matchups and stuff are the ones that were the most intriguing for the Chargers, Raiders, and also this Broncos one. A lot of kind of new faces in different spots. But let's talk about this Monday Night Football game real quick, just because I don't think there's a ton to talk about, though I thought it was really interesting to see Russell Wilson on the kind of receiving end of playing in Seattle, just where you see how loud the crowd is. And I think you could kind of tell that he was feeling it a little bit in this one. The clock man, I mean, he actually played well, but the clock management was absolutely abysmal. I feel like kind of going back over the last, I don't know, quite some time, that was one of the worst clock managements over the course of the whole game that I've seen in a while. A bunch of delay games called, and there was also a false start at one point. And Peyton and Eli on the Manning cast were talking about it, and they're like, look, that's kind of on Russ because every single time they're going up to the line with 5 seconds left, not getting out of the huddle. So I thought that was really interesting. But Makana, what were your first thoughts of Russ on the Broncos?
Yeah, I think also, first off, I just want to apologize that I'm not going to be talking very loudly because I'm in a hotel right now and it's almost midnight. But I think the first off, it was very clear that the system isn't 100% set in Denver. And I fully believe in this team. I fully believe in Russ. All my statements about Russ still stand. But it's a new coach, it's a new quarterback, and it's week one. That is a massive shift, for an offensive line trying to do all of these adjustments. And so Russell Wilson, it's his first time ever playing it. And then obviously also you're in Seattle. And now it's not just regular Seattle, it's prime time Seattle. Like the amount of emotion that they had, like it was almost a playoff game for them because it was the Russ game, right? That's looked at as, hey, this is what we were trying to beat. We got to go beat Russ. We got to beat the guy that left us. I mean, they were doing they were booing Russ, and that was surprising to me. I was not expecting that. But like they were amped for this game, and I think that definitely showed. But the other thing is the like Russell Wilson. If you purely watch Russell Wilson, you'd be like, yeah, the Broncos won this football game. He got them down to the 1 yard line multiple times. Then they hand the ball off, and the running backs fumble. And I made a joke on Twitter, and I said, "This is why the Seahawks threw the ball. You don't want Russ handing the ball off to running backs apparently at the 1 yard line. Like I guess it's not a good strategy because they were just fumbling. Like the Melvin Gordon one, Melvin Gordon fumbled before he even got tackled. Like he dropped the ball like just falling. And then Javante got punched out as a great play, but like I think the biggest storyline in this game is one, the way that they ran the football. I felt like it was a lot of really weird play calls, and two, it was who they were running with. Why if you're watching the Manning cast, you saw this. Why is Javante not out there as much as he was? Like, and it was like crucial situation, potential game winning drive right here. And it's like the Melvin Gordon drive. And you're like, what? Why is this guy in? He's not a better pass blocker, he's not a better pass catcher, and he's not a better runner of the football. And they've both fumbled. It's not a situation where you go, oh well, Javante fumbled, they didn't want to keep it. Like, Russ or Melvin fumbled first. I thought that was the scariest thing for this offense because if they go out there and they say, no, it's going to be a split, that's going to be the thing that kills this team.
Dude, yeah, and it was really weird too, just because Javante actually I think he finished the game with 7 carries and 11 receptions, if I'm right. He might have got one more reception at the end. Yeah, really weird. 11 receptions, dude. But it was like a lot of dump offs just like underneath. Okay, here, like get a couple yards, get a couple yards. And he ends up making a great play at the end, and they missed the field goal, but like He makes the guy miss. I mean, he looked really good, I thought. Um, Javante has kind of, I would say, for in my opinion, he's exceeded the expectations that I had for him coming out of school. I think he is an absolute stud. But I'm totally with you. They gotta have him on the field more. And I don't dislike Melvin Gordon. I don't think Melvin Gordon's a bad player or anything like that. But Javante looks like a budding superstar at the running back position. So like you need him out there. Almost kind of reminds, and not the same capacity of the players. But when the Titans had DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry, and it was like, dude, why is
That would
DeMarco
be
out there?
exotic smash mouth football if you
Yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah, and one of the great offenses of the 2010 era. But yeah, I think that's probably all I got for the Broncos. But just wanted to quickly go over the stuff with Russ and all of them. So let's get into this Chargers Raiders game. I thought this was one of the most intriguing games just because one, you have a new look Raiders offense, right? You have Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams did not disappoint. Devontae Adams was absolutely insane. But you have him, you have Waller, right? Okay, you got all these big moves. On the Chargers side, you don't have J.C. Jackson, but you do have Khalil Mack, and then of course Khalil Mack went absolutely insane. But the Chargers also added some depth in their secondary, got a little bit better there. And my big takeaway from this one was, hey, all those pieces that the Raiders added looked really good. We saw Chandler Jones make a couple plays. I already said Devontae Adams looked incredible. Dude, Carr was bad. Carr was really bad in this one. And I was surprised just because his guys like Waller had a pretty solid game. Adams had a pretty solid game. Even like Jake, I wouldn't say Jacobs had a solid game, but Jacobs had a couple like solid run plays and like their running game. I thought it was weird that they used Brandon Bolden a little bit more than I was expecting, but overall, I just found it really interesting because both of like the new additions that were on display there looked really good. But I still kind of have the same question marks for both of these teams. So I watched this was the afternoon game that I watched most. I usually watch like a few games and rotate through and have like red zone on and stuff like that. Um, but for the Raiders, all the pressure is on Derek Carr. Like you better have your career year this year. We got you everything you need. Like this is the year you got to go win the division, even though it's kind of like your work cut out for you of how good the AFC West is. But there's a lot of pressure on him. He didn't look very good. And then flip side for the Chargers, everyone. I mean, if you ask any like, it feels like at this point, if you ask any fan like who are the best quarterbacks in the league, they bring up Justin Herbert every single time. And we've talked about Herbert, and this isn't to knock Herbert, but like a lot of times in games, it just gets really flat and he just kind of doesn't do anything. Dude, the second half, the Raiders were in the game and they had absolutely no business being in that football game. The Chargers didn't do anything offensively for like the last 25 minutes of the game. And I was sitting at it there and I'm thinking this is the exact question marks that I've had of Herbert since he was like before he was declaring for the draft at Oregon. Like it's always been the same thing. It's never the tools, but you got to be able to win football games. The Raiders had like four opportunities that they probably shouldn't have had being like within like one or two scores where they just kept barely being able to chip away, not playing well, and then they're still in the game at the end of it. So I thought it was just weird because yes, you bring these new additions, but I still have the same question marks for these teams. So that was a big thing there. And Makana, I saw you nodding when I was talking about Herbert a little bit. Um, what did you think? And do you think I'm kind of spot on with that? Like, hey, you got these new additions, they look nice, but you had the same question marks.
Yeah, so this game, so I was at the Ravens game for people that don't know. So I really only got to watch the second half of this game. I was, on my phone and, trying to watch stuff, and then I get to the Lincoln Tunnel, and I'm like, oh no, I don't have service anymore. My phone died, and I was like, okay, can't watch this game anymore. It was like it seemed like Herbert was playing well, and then I turn on the TV when I get home, and I'm like, Chargers game, Chargers Raiders, boom, and I'm like, wait a minute, why is this still kind of playable? And I'm like watching it, and I'm like, this Chargers offense isn't moving. And this, Matt and I have talked about this consistently. We love Herbert. We are big fans of Justin Herbert. But like Matt said, the question about Herbert is the consistency, and not just his overall consistency, but every time it just seems like the offenses and the teams that they're in, they don't keep their foot on the gas. And that's what you expect when you have a player the caliber of Justin Herbert, right? When you have those guys that are those gunslingers, they have all the tools and they have the weapons. You look at Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, it was just, oh yeah, they just kept going, right? And then it got to a point where they're up like 30 on the Cardinals, and they're like, okay, now it doesn't matter. But like this is a division rivalry, and I was watching that whole game, that whole second half, and I'm like, are the Raiders going to pull this off? And they had the ball down. What did they lose by 5 points? Um, they had the ball late, driving, and you're like, how? And everybody, this is the funny thing that came out of it was a lot of people because the Burrow and Herbert they're going to be connected forever, like Trey Young and Luka Doncic, same draft class, both super talented, both super loved by a lot of people. A lot of people were going out there and they were saying because obviously Joe Burrow had a terrible game, against the Steelers, 4 picks and a turnover, and I saw these people and they were like, "Don't ever compare these two quarterbacks again," because we had all these interceptions, and it's like Justin Herbert almost did the exact opposite, where it's like, yeah, he didn't turn the ball over, but the offense fell completely flat, and he allowed the opposing team to come back and nearly win the football game. Now, luckily, Herbert ended up pulling it out. You got to give him credit for that. Joe Burrow, unfortunately, honestly, you can't really blame him too much for the end of game struggles, but the first half was, kind of atrocious for him. Those are the things that we are trying to figure out whether or not he can do. Can Justin Herbert make a 60-yard throw, off his back foot? Yeah, but that he was doing that at Oregon. The question is, can Justin Herbert be a consistent quarterback in the NFL at that superstar level for a full game in these big meaningful games? In this game, um, it just seemed like another one where the team just comes back. You don't want to be a superstar that has other teams come back because there's some guys, right? You let Josh Allen get a 14-point lead on you. You let Patrick Mahomes get a 14-point lead on you. You're done. But it seems like Justin Herbert right now, he gets a big lead on you. It's okay. Like if you just play good football, you can get right back in that football game.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say I want to add one more thing because I didn't bring it up when I discussed it. But to be fair, he was missing Keenan Allen, and early on in the game, Keenan was the guy. Like he was hitting Keenan over and over and over and over again. So that could also throw it off. But the difference is like when I talk about Herbert, that's always like this is kind of my question mark with Herbert. It's never about the tools. It's like you were saying, we like Herbert. Like I think he can be really, really good. I mean, I think he flashes the Josh Allen, Mahomes tools, right? He does. He definitely does. But is he gonna win at that rate? Is he gonna continue going these cold stretches? Because it's been like 4 years where he's consistently gone on cold stretches. But I just did want to bring up that Keenan Allen was out because that plays a significant role in like, okay, a little bit harder to start to keep carving up the defense when it was very clear that the guy that you were going to carve them up with was Keenan Allen because the Raiders had absolutely no answer for him. He was open. It felt like every single play early on, and it was just Allen, 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 and then he got hurt. I was like, okay, that's tough. Like it's really tough when your number one guy goes down in the middle of the game. But still, that's my question marks with Justin Herbert.
I have a question for you, Matt. When should Brandon Staley be fired?
Well, he went for it on a fourth down again this game, and I was like, dude, you got to be kidding me, man! Like at a stupid point too. I was like, why are you going for it? And then they run like a halfback dive or something. I was like, dude, really?
It was
Um,
like 4th and 3 or something like that,
No,
right?
it was a
Was it
fourth and
fourth
one,
and
I wanna
one?
say, yeah,
Okay.
or fourth and 2. It wasn't super long, but
Okay.
it was just like I I don't think he's very good, and I've said that since, like, the beginning of dude, he's the reason they didn't make the playoffs. Forget everything else. I get that they couldn't stop the run. I get that they couldn't do things, but there's a lot of pressure. If they don't make the playoffs, he's going to be fired, and if he's not fired and they don't make the playoffs, that's a joke. Like, I don't know what to tell you, because they should have made the playoffs. They should make the playoffs this year, barring any injuries. And last year, they absolutely should have made the playoffs. And it was kind of almost like an embarrassment that they didn't. Trying to think of anything else in this game that kind of stood out. I think the Chargers defense looked nice, dude. Like, and they didn't have JC, and their defense was still balling out. So, hey, you bring up Brandon Staley. If the defense continues to look nice, that's his product right there. And they got a bunch of good players, but he's also part of the guys building this team too. So I was really impressed by the Chargers defense. I did bring up that I didn't think Carr played that well, but also there were guys on Chargers defense flying around making big time plays. So that helps a lot. I think the question mark for them is going to be, are they going to be able to stop the run? In this one, the Raiders were trying to air it out a lot, and they didn't have much success doing so. You have 3 picks. Adams was amazing, but like, all right, Adams is going to do that to anyone. I just thought they held their own in terms of stuff, and they made a bunch of plays. They got a lot of sacks. The pass rush is legit as we expected with Mack and Bosa. Dude, that's so dirty. Every time I bring that up, it's like, God damn, man, you got Mack and Bosa on that D line. That's crazy. So I think that was probably the other takeaway. I think the Raiders are still pretty solid. I think both these teams are legit teams in the AFC. I think they're both clearly contending for a playoff spot. But I'm excited. I thought this game, like when I was looking at the afternoon slate, I was like, damn, this is definitely the game I'm going to be keen in on the most because this is a sick one. But anything else you want to add on it?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's keep it in the AFC. There's a few games here that I want to talk about. So the AFC North had the craziest game of the weekend. That was unbelievable how ridiculous that Steelers-Bengals game was. Makana, I know you didn't see it. I hope you watched the highlights. It was back and forth. Early on, we see a bunch of picks from Burrow. I think Burrow fumbled too. I want to say he had a fumble and 4 picks.
Yes.
The Steelers defense, just the pass rush is unbelievable. We were talking about earlier this offseason, we were talking about the best front sevens in the league, and I put the Steelers at number 1. I think you put them at 2 or 3. Like, you weren't sleeping on the Steelers.
I think there were 3.
Yeah, we both have them in our top 3 in terms of the best front sevens. And the reason they're so good is because of that D-line, because TJ Watt looked unbelievable. I mean, yeah, Hayward there. Like, it's just – it doesn't even matter, like, sometimes who the other guys are because – you know that the Steelers are going to find these guys, and then, oh, boom, look at that. He's a stud player in a couple of years. It happens all the time. It's just a team that consistently produces good D linemen and good front sevens. Guess what? Their D line's legit. Their front seven is legit. It's going to win them a bunch of football games. Makana, you had them as the upset of the week. So you start, and I'll say this. I took +7 on the spreads for the Steelers. So they ended up covering, but I'm looking at this one, and early on, they're killing them. Steelers had absolutely no offense. And then the Bengals start coming back, right? Jamar Chase. I watched the morning games. I'm like, Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the league. And then I thought again, and I was like, wait a second.
Cooper
Kupp
the morning
on
games.
Thursday, and then I watched Justin Jefferson. I was like, shoot, Justin Jefferson just played. And then Devontae Adams just played. But when I was watching Jamar Chase, I was like, damn, this guy's the best receiver in the league. He had one play where it wasn't a catch, but it was like Odell-esque in the end zone where just one hand tap. Yes. Ridiculous, dude. He is insane. So we did get to see a little bit of a Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow comeback. I felt like that's just going to become like a vintage thing. I like Joe Burrow a lot, and he had no time. He had nothing to work with early on, but they were able to hang in and come back against the pitiful Steelers offense. But I think that I want to shout out one guy before we get into it. There's one guy that deserves so much praise, and that is Minka Fitzpatrick. He had 2 penalties where guys are coming across the middle, and he blows them up, and he gets a penalty. And he is so frustrated and so annoyed because he's like, dude, I'm making the play. And it's hard. It's hard being a safety in today's game because they were penalties. I mean, at least I took them as like, yeah, that's a pretty legit penalty. You can't hit a guy like that across the middle. But it's tough because, like, what is he supposed to do? And then one of the next plays, they throw across the middle into the end zone, and he goes and he hits the guy, but he breaks up the pass. And he walks over to the ref, and he's like, you going to call that one too? Because, like, what am I supposed to do, basically? And so you can tell he is so annoyed, and he was playing really well too. And then he blocks the field goal, and overtime was just back and forth ridiculous. But the Steelers were able to win. So I thought that was the best game of the weekend, and it was just a complete roller coaster. Dude, it took like 4 hours too. It was super long. It was a really, really long game. So I know you didn't watch too much of that, but I bring up the AFC North because I want to talk about it because not only did the Steelers upset the Bengals and kind of showed like, okay, this defense is legit. Also, side note, TJ Watt is not going to be out super long. I think it's like 6 weeks he's going to be out. So he'll be back. It's not out for the year. So that's super clutch for them because everything changes big time if you don't have TJ Watt. So Steelers come out, they win. Ravens play, and you can talk more about the Ravens game. Dude, I told you I was watching a lot of Red Zone. I was watching the Niners game in the morning. I saw like 3 plays of the Ravens game because it was a couple deep shots and it was like nothing else going on. Very, very strange game there, but they take care of business against a bad Jets team and they beat Mr. Flacco. And then the Browns, I think a lot of people just think that the Panthers suck. But the Browns played a good game against the Panthers, and they won that game, and I thought they played really well. Their run game is terrific. Both Chubb and Hunt look like they did. I wouldn't say last year because they were banged up a little bit, but in what is that, 2020? In 2020, they were looking really nice. So they looked really good. That run game is going to kind of, for their sake, the first 11 weeks kind of keep their season afloat. But my question, because I have the AFC North here, is the AFC North back? Because it felt like last year kind of took a year off of like being like this super stacked division. At least maybe early on last year it was, and then you have a bunch of injuries. But is this one of those divisions where we look at the AFC West and we go, oh, that AFC West is insane? AFC North might be the second best division because you have an insane defense in Pittsburgh. You have a nasty passing, like I don't even want to call it trio, it's just passing offense. And with the Bengals, the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, and they play pretty solid on defense, but Lamar in the run game just kind of eat up all the clock, and they just kind of suffocate you with that. And then the Browns, they could be a legit team later on in the year if they can just be kind of meh and go about 500 in their first, 11 games. But is the AFC North back? Is this a division where we are going to look up and go, oh, wow, 3 of these teams were over 500, and the only team that wasn't over 500 was 1 game underneath. Is it going to look something like that?
Yeah, I said this when, kind of when the Browns got Deshaun Watson. And this was before, because I think if Deshaun Watson is playing this entire season, this is the best division in football. Like, I said that when they got Deshaun Watson, and I know about the AFC West because I was looking at it, and Matt, like you said, I was like, they have the best defense in the NFL. They arguably have 2 top 4 offenses in the NFL. I would say in the Bengals and the Ravens, depending on Greg Roman and the Ravens and how they do it. And then, I mean, we have no idea what Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns are going to be, but remember our top 5 running back rankings? Nick Chubb is in there. They have a really good offensive line. They have good pass catchers. Like this, and the other thing about this is it's going to be very different than playing the AFC West, right? You play the AFC West and you're in a shootout. You play the AFC North and you're in a dogfight. Like it is physical. And these teams, this is the most physical division historically. This is the most physical division currently. And the players in this, I mean, the superstars in it, they're all unique, right? It's Jamar Chase, who maybe has the best tools of any wide receiver since Randy Moss or Calvin Johnson. Probably those 2 guys. Those are probably the only 2 guys in history that have the tools that Jamar Chase has. And then you look at the Steelers and you're like, oh, who do they have on defense? Some dude named TJ Watt, who's like the most unstoppable player on defense outside of Aaron Donald in the NFL. Just because the thing is, he can play the pass. He's not just a pass rusher. Like, he is a guy where it's like, oh, he will get consistent interceptions. He's a guy who will consistently get by you and stop the run.
He had an interception.
He did have an interception, but
Yeah.
he was rushing
And
the
it was
passer on that interception, right?
yes, but it was still a nice play, and you
Yeah.
just saw like, oh, this
Like
guy.
a prime JJ Watt jump up,
Yeah,
grab it type of play. And that's what made JJ Watt so unbelievable. But it was like he didn't get a sack. Oh, what did he do? He jumped up and intercepted it at the offensive line. And you're like, dude, stop. And then you go over to the Browns and you're like, oh, they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, the best 1-2 punch in all of football. And they have Myles Garrett on the defensive line. So like it is so difficult to play against them. Like maybe internally the AFC West is the most difficult, but externally, I would much rather play against the Raiders. I would much rather play against the Chargers. I would much rather play probably I wouldn't say against the Broncos or the Chiefs because I think they're a little bit of outliers. Like dude, I would hate to go into Pittsburgh. Even if Pittsburgh's like, a 9-win team, I'm like, damn it. I don't want to be here. Like, get me out of this game because it's going to be very, very difficult, even if you squeak out a win. But in that Pittsburgh game, Matt, I don't know if you know this. You know what I said would be the best game of the weekend? Because I made my TikToks about every single game. I said Pittsburgh Bengals would be the best game of the weekend. And like that, I don't. A lot of people get so mad at me every time I talk about the Bengals, and I'm like, okay, it's not, sometimes I used to do this when I was playing high school sports and stuff like that. You get that one guy on that opposing like club team or whatever, and you're like, that dude is so good. And you start to look at him and you're like, oh my gosh. Like maybe I played soccer. So like I remember this kid, I think his name was Tyson. It was something like that. And he was a center back. All right. Was he the best player in our league? No, he was not. But I swear he never lost a one-on-one. And it was like you get a one-on-one situation with him and you're taking a rest and you're on the bench and you're like, it's a loss. And everyone's like, why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep looking at this guy like he's Superman? He's not Superman. I feel like everybody's looking at the Bengals like, it's Superman. They're unbeatable, right? You can't go up against them. They're just too crazy on offense. They're just too crazy, too loaded, too many superstars. They're a great team. They are a great team. But the AFC North, oftentimes, this has been the case for 22 years, my entire life. Most of the times, the winner of that game is the team that's more physical. That is how that division is won. It is the team in the trenches that is bullying the other team harder. It doesn't matter who ends up, oh, yeah, we got this big, 50-yard touchdown. That's not what matters in that game. It is who is rushing the ball and who is hitting the quarterback the hardest. And that's what's going to throw you off. The other thing about that game is I was seeing, because it was popping up on Red Zone all the time in the stadium and stuff like that. You know who Mitchell Trubisky threw a deep ball to in this game? The best wide receiver in the history of the Baltimore Ravens franchise, Miles Boykin. They're throwing a deep ball to Miles, and I'm like, I see the deep ball going up. I'm like, that's a pretty good ball. I see it like kind of go by the fingertips. I'm like, oh man, I wonder who that was. And then I see Boykin on the back, and I was like, there we go. That's the reason. That's the reason. You throw George Pickens right there, boom, that's a catch. You throw Simi Fehoko right there, that's a catch. Like Miles Boykin is garbage. Like no wonder the offense isn't working. That's your deep threat. Um, but I mean, Najee Harris also exited the game. Mitch did have the touchdown pass to him. Mitch, the thing is, this is what I've said consistently about Mitch Trubisky. He's not going to go crazy. He's going to consistently manage the game so that the defense can get them the win. I mean, that's why they brought him in, and that's exactly what he did. Obviously, it got close, but even game on the line, overtime, he got his team into field goal position twice. He got them to be able to have that opportunity. Now, Boswell missed the first one off the upright, but he was able to make the second one. So I think that, obviously once we get TJ Watt back, that's going to be really scary. But in terms of the Ravens game, watching this game, I'm so excited for the Ravens this year. They were missing some key pieces. They were missing Marcus Peters. They were missing Ronnie Stanley. They were missing all of their running backs. So yeah, the run game didn't look great, but they were running Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis. I do not care about that run game because we know that we're getting the other guys back. But the other guy they're missing is Travis Jones. And Travis Jones is an unbelievable interior defensive lineman out of the University of Connecticut. I thought he was a first round pick when I made a video about him before he was even drafted by the Ravens saying this guy is a better pass down defender than Jordan Davis. Like get him out there, he will get you sacks. I compared him to Chris Jones. He's injured for the start of the season. He's supposed to miss like 3 to 5 weeks. The Ravens' interior defensive line dominated the Jets like completely. Justin Madubuike, who is a third-round defensive tackle, looked unblockable in the game, and he was someone that he first really stepped up against the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs. When they ended up getting the victory over the Titans, it was like, oh, Madubuike is coming out. And last year, people were looking at him. It was like, oh, can he do it? Madubuike and Michael Pierce were fantastic. And that is something that the Ravens needed from their defensive line was the interior pressure.
I wanted to add, also, you think about the Jets and you go, oh, the Jets suck. Dude, the Jets' interior offensive line is legit. They have
Yeah.
Langston Tomlinson, Connor McGovern, and Elijah Vera Tucker.
You know who they were dominating? Tomlinson. Tomlinson was getting mauled every single time, and it's hilarious. He's getting
They
paid
just signed big
17
money to
million
him
a
too.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that interior defensive line was fantastic. And they were making, I mean, how do you beat Joe Flacco? You make him move. You get him out of the pocket. And they were just blitzing all over the place. The other guy that looked, this is scary for the NFL. Because you know who looked like looked like a Pro Bowler? Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen came out there. I was watching the game with my dad, and my dad was like, "Who is number 6?" I was like, "That right there is Patrick Queen." And Patrick Queen was just, I mean, he was blitzing, he was hitting every hole. He was hitting Michael Carter and Brees Hall in the backfield almost every time they ran the ball. Like he was flying all over the field. Um, and those are the guys that had the question marks for me. The pressure from the defensive line, especially the interior, and the linebacker group. That's what dominated in this game.
I was
The
gonna
other
say
weird,
you've ripped Patrick Queen quite many times.
yeah, the thing that was so weird about this game, because Matt, we were talking about this, and we looked up the stats in this game, and I can't pull up the stats because I'm on my phone. The way that, like, if you looked at the box score of this game, it looks horrible for the Ravens. They ran 50 plays.
Dude, they ran like no plays. They lost time of possession. They had less yards. It was every single thing basically like that you would look at to be like, oh, which team outperformed the other. And then it was like they had less passing and less rushing. And like they had basically like the score, which was and it's what was 24-9, but then the Jets scored with like a minute left, so that was
Yeah,
already inflated. So it was really like 24-3 all game. And it's like, wait, but they're losing every single thing in terms of stats besides of yards, like yards per attempt or sorry, yards per play,
yeah.
and they won by 3 scores.
And the 2019 Ravens offense, that's obviously the standard for them. That's what they want to get back to. The reason why they were so good was they led the NFL in big plays. Every Lamar Jackson touchdown pass this week was over 20 yards. Constitutes as a big play. They hit the deep ball. They hit Mark Andrews deep. This game was also kind of the weather was it wasn't Niners Bears weather, but it was weird. It was like because it was hot, it was muggy, but it was also raining kind of hard in the game. Which and in week one, Lamar Jackson didn't play in any of the preseason games. Most of the Ravens like big guys didn't play. So it was just kind of weird for them. It was pretty obvious when you're watching, especially in the first half, where you're like, okay, they haven't played in a while. The second half, it stopped raining, and they were just like, all right, Lamar, now we're gonna start throwing the ball down the field. And then it was just like, oh, look at that, it works. And they just started just completely dogging on the Jets, and it looked like how it should have looked. But it was just kind of weird statistically how you look at that game and you're like, because I wanted to look at the stats. I was like, oh, how did the Ravens do? And I'm like, wait, Joe Flacco threw for over 300 yards? What? Like Lamar Jackson, like I know he had 3 touchdown passes. He did technically have an interception, but the interception was 3rd and 6 at like his own like 7 yard line with 2 minutes left in the game, and they said, "Hey, just throw a jump ball 40 yards down the field," and it got intercepted by DJ Reed. And also for the people that are getting mad at DJ Reed, because I believe after he got that interception, he took a knee on the NFL logo in the middle of the Jets field. Um, his father passed away, I believe, like an hour before the game or something like that. And people were like clowning on him, like, man, look at this fool celebrating um, on the NFL logo. And it's like he's very obviously like not celebrating. Like it was like I think he got on his knees and like it was like very clearly an emotional moment, and people were trying to clown on him. Like sometimes other things are happening. So it was cool for him to do that.
We
But
got to see some interesting stuff from NFL fans, and then Russell Wilson got booed. Dude, it reminds me of when Andrew Luck came back, and they booed Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's like, almost died for this franchise, dude. What?
yeah, I almost died
Um,
for this franchise because they refused to give me an offensive lineman. And then I retire and they go, let's draft Quentin Nelson.
yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably it for the AFC North. So a couple other things I wanted to go over. Um, we could save Dak for the next one, but let's talk about Vikings Packers. Just because this is one, and I want to talk a little bit more about the Vikings in this one because my question is: are the Vikings going to win this division? Because couple talking points. One, Justin Jefferson, insane. That offense is potentially going to be a little bit better than it has in years past. The big thing for the Vikings, of course, is going to be are they healthy? Because they have a lot of older guys on their roster. They have a lot of guys, especially defensively. You look at like kind of like their big time playmakers, um, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks. Like they've been in the league for quite some time, man. And like they're still great players. Don't get me wrong, but it's just you kind of have some questions of like, okay, how much longer are they going to be able to play at this high level? So if they are able to do that, and you look at this Vikings roster, they're the best roster in that division. Then you look at the Packers and you go, okay, the Packers have lost a bunch of guys over the past 2 years. This receiving core looks like terrible. Christian Watson, I think you saw that one, just drops an open like 70-yard touchdown pass. But it's not even just that. It's just like they just don't really have anything. And it was also great. If you're watching Red Zone, you would see like Aaron Rodgers just getting super frustrated with people, and then they would like flip over to Raiders Chargers, and it was like Devontae Adams open, Devontae Adams open, Devontae Adams open, and he's just absolutely tearing him up. And you're like, oh, that probably is really annoying Packers fans right now because simultaneously Devontae Adams just cooking any DB that's on him. But I'm wondering about this Packers team because they don't look that legit. The Vikings handed it to them. The Vikings were in complete control of that game the entire time. Um, if the Packers are going to run an offense that's like, okay, we're running an offense that's like based on our running backs, like it almost reminds you of kind of like what the Browns are trying to build, right? But like what the Browns are trying to do with Jacoby Brissett. And it's like, all right, you're gonna have Aaron Rodgers and you're not gonna have any legit weapons for him. Why? Like, why would you build your roster like this? It just seems so stupid. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Packers. I think they're going to be like decent. I think they could make the playoffs and stuff. But if you're just looking at it from which roster is better, it's not even a discussion. The Vikings roster is so much better. So do you think the Vikings are going to be able to win this division?
Yeah, they were my pick to win this division, and here's the thing. I'm fine with getting rid of Devontae Adams. Obviously, I think he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. I think there's two other guys you can even argue, and that's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, which Justin Jefferson unfortunately plays in that division, and just absolutely torched you. I think he had 150 in the first half with two touchdowns. It's unbelievable. But if you're going to get rid of Devontae Adams, when the problem with their offense was Devontae Adams was the only receiver that they had. It was like, who else is there? And you're like, Alan Lazard. Like, yeah, he's had a couple of good games. Who's your tight end? Oh, Tunyon. It's like, okay. Um, oh, but we drafted this guy, Romeo Doubs or Romeo Dubes out of Nevada. Um, and you're like, okay, late round pick. Oh, and Christian Watson. He's 6'5", he ran a good 40. But the problem with him is he's a developmental wide receiver.
Yeah,
And
dude,
they go,
he's coming out of North Dakota. Like he's not going to be week one starter material at all.
yeah. Now, obviously, you hope he makes that catch because Rogers threw a great ball. But like the fact that they didn't go out and get anybody, like, what are they doing? I don't understand how they. It's like, okay, you lose Devontae Adams, that's fine. How do you not go, hey, Julio, you want to come and play with Aaron Rodgers? Because Julio Jones comes into
Julio
Tampa
looked
Bay and it's like,
good.
dude, because
He looked
Julio, the
legit.
problem was, I thought Julio looked good in Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill could not get him the football, and it was hilarious. Like Ryan Tannehill and Julio, bottom tier connection. Their chemistry was zero. Like it was terrible. But like all these guys are coming to new spots, and it's like, dude, you couldn't even get like anybody. Like, how do you not sign a single player? And then they're like, okay, here's the problem with how the Packers decided to rebuild. One, they drafted AJ Dillon. I have no problem with that. But after doing so, when it is, oh, they're moving on from their running back, uh, they decided, you know what, we're going to give him a large extension. We're going to have two running backs, but it's okay. We have Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Then they go, oh, let's get rid of Devontae Adams. And so their money on their offense is with their main running back and it's with their quarterback. But the problem is their draft capital went to their backup running back and their fourth and like fifth string wide receivers. That's where their draft capital went. And you're like, so they're not bringing in any tight ends or like again, they don't have to bring in, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be able to play well with, a solid, a fine, a wide receiver too, right? Like you could throw Tyler Boyd on that team and that team would be drastically improved. Um, but instead, dude, I don't even know how Randall Cobb is still playing in the NFL. Randall Cobb would not be signed by any other team other than the Packers, and he's their wide receiver too. Like, like that is horrifying if I'm Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm looking at this like, why did I come back? Because the whole thing was Devontae Adams left because he didn't know if Aaron Rodgers would be staying. That was what the interview said. He said, yeah, it was the uncertainty of how long Rodgers is going to be there. And so I felt like, hey, I want to be able to play with a really good quarterback, and so I'm going to go play with my buddy Derek Carr. Dude, he left, and now you're screwed because you have nobody to throw to.
Dude, I wanna bring this up. So everyone always praises the Packers. Look what the Packers have been able to do. Look at all this consistency that they built. Like that's like out of like almost every organization, they get praised the most.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of the Steelers because of the Steelers like zero coaching turnover, right? Are we really gonna sit here and not act like they've just completely blown a bunch of like these guys like Rogers' career? Dude, there's always massive roster question marks. And like I also think there's the other discussion of like and this has kind of also been like proven as like not really accurate, but like Rogers not really performing in the playoffs because actually, if you go and break down the games, it's like no, he's looked actually good in all these games. It's like very
The
rarely that he's actually
roster
played
falls
that.
through.
Dude, whose idea was it to say, you know, I think a good idea for what we should build is a rushing offense with two running backs that are the clear focal point, and and then have the worst wide receiver core in the league, and have Aaron Rodgers.
That's the Greg Roman
What?
offense.
Yeah, what are you doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And everyone always praises, oh yeah, they're so consistent, they're so good at this. Dude, they need to try to get some more turnover. They need to mix some things up because it isn't working. And then all of a sudden they're in this spot now. They're in a we're almost done with Aaron Rodgers. They have what, 2, 3 years left? You're gonna give it over to Jordan Love? Good luck. Because it looks like they fall into a bad rebuild. And I don't really think that's being discussed enough is like they just screwed this roster. Their roster has got so much worse over the past couple years. So I'm really confused about what the Packers are going to do. I did bring up the Vikings. So I want to talk a little bit about the Vikings, about them winning this division because, dude,
Can
the
I add
Vikings are
on the
legit.
Packers?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think, Matt, I think 100% the way that people look at this roster, but the way that they look at, I think people look at the Packers almost in the same light that they look at the New England Patriots, obviously a little bit less so. Patriots won all the Super Bowls, but it's like Rodgers isn't a quarterback that is in the NFC Championship every game. That's not his career. Right? Obviously, the last couple of seasons they've had some really good rosters, right? They had Devontae Adams and they had a decent defense, but there were years where it was like, oh, early, prime Aaron Rodgers, obviously like 2012, unbelievable, all that stuff. But it's like there's years where it's like, Vikings, they're winning that division. Oh, the Bears, they're winning that division. It was never really the Lions, but you had division where it's like, oh yeah, why? You're like, oh, Rodgers and the Packers, they just weren't doing a whole lot this year. They just didn't really have the weapons. And it's like it seems like they were always on these curves. And it was like when they get the right receiver, right? You got Jordy Nelson, you got Donald Driver. It's like, boom, Super Bowl, let's go. And it's like, oh, they're on the downhill. And then they wait way too long to ever get anybody new. And then they're like, oh, look at that. We got Devontae Adams. We're back up. And they're like, all right, bye, Devontae. And they just completely destroyed every momentum that they had because that was the benefit Rodgers came into because it was like, hey, you have some good wide receivers. You can come in and, obviously you're super talented. Jordan Love is going to come in and his wide receivers, one, he's not going to play with. The only reason Randall Cobb is there because it's Aaron Rod. Aaron likes him. Um, Alan Lazard is not good. He is he's a fine wide receiver three, wide receiver four. I would love him as a depth piece. He's not a one. Sammy Watkins is not a one. Um, yeah, I watched Sammy Watkins last year. Sammy Watkins was probably, I mean, you could argue Sammy Watkins was the fourth best receiver on the Ravens last year. And the Ravens were known last year as being one of the worst wide receiver groups you could build in the NFL. And he went over to a team and people are like, Sammy Watkins is back as the one. And you're like, what? Sammy Watkins hasn't been the one since like 2017 with the Bills.
Yeah, that's not a positive statement.
Yeah, like it's just the way that they did it. Like, and I like Christian Watson coming out. I actually really liked Dubes coming out. But to ask, and people are like, oh, but Aaron Rodgers just doesn't really trust young wide receivers. Well, if you ever gave Aaron Rodgers a young wide receiver that was ready to play in the NFL, maybe he would be able to trust them because they don't draft the first round wide receivers. This was a great wide receiver class, right? You had some really good players that went, relatively early, even in that division, Jamison Williams. But instead they go, no, and they had a lot of first round picks. They go, no, we're going to get Christian Watson early in the second. I like Christian Watson again, but they didn't have anybody. If you don't have anybody, you can't draft a guy for the long haul because they don't have anybody else for the long haul. This is a very clear win now, and they said, let's build for the future. They have in the last 5 years, they never make moves that help Rodgers.
They're not aggressive enough at all, ever.
Never.
And it's like, okay, yeah, like cool, like nice. I don't know what to tell you. Like I just don't get it because it's like they get praised for it so much. It's like, why? Why are
And the
you
Vikings
praising
do
it?
the opposite, and they're in an amazing position right now because they
Yeah,
went
the
out and they
Vikings are
said,
gonna
let's get our stud wide receiver and let's maintain our weapon. Let's
let's go
maintain
take a
Adam
guy from the
Thielen.
Packers and
Oh, we
Zadarius Smith.
lost. Look at what they did. The exact opposite. Oh, we have one of the best young wide receivers in the NFL. We trade him away. Let's replace him. And they replaced Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson. The Packers said, oh, let's trade away Devontae Adams. Here you go. Here is Sammy Watkins, wide receiver three from the Ravens. Here's your new starter. And he's on the decline of his career.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's gonna salvage this is if like Dobbs or Christian Watson turns into like an absolute monster this year. But even if they turn into it like down the road, it's like, okay, but the point still stands. They did not come ready for this year, even if they're good players. That's the thing. It's not even like to rip those guys. Because I think the verdict is not even close to being out on them yet. But okay, the Vikings. We've been talking this whole time a bunch about the Packers. Let's talk about the Vikings a little bit. Their defense, I wouldn't say it's super deep, but they have basically a guy on every level that you really like. On the D line, they have Danielle Hunter, extremely underrated. Zadarius Smith, just kind of brought him up a second ago. They also had Dalvin Tomlinson. Like they have some decent guys interior. Eric Hendricks is one of the most underrated linebackers in the entire NFL. Eric Hendricks is an absolute stud. And then in the secondary, they have Harrison Smith and Cameron Dantzler. Corners back room isn't great. I don't think Pat Pete's really that good, but they're pretty solid on defense, I would say. Then offensively, the question mark, the only question mark is the offensive line gonna be able to gel enough? Because they're super young. Like all of their offensive linemen are drafted 2019 and on, outside of Brian O'Neill, who's their best offensive lineman, and he was drafted in 2018. So these guys are all relatively new. But that's the big question for them. It's like, dude, you guys are going to win a lot of games. And I believe no, they have a second place schedule. I thought for some reason I was thinking they had a third place schedule, but they're going to be in a good spot to win this division. So I'm going to pick them to win this division right now. And I don't really think this is like a week one overreaction because we had talked about this as like, no, if you're looking at this division, like it's probably going to be a toss up between the Packers and the Vikings. And I just feel like we just saw the matchup and it's like, okay, the Vikings are way better than the Packers. And I get that Kirk Cousins, he's not that great. when you have the pieces around him like they do, it's gonna work. They're gonna win a lot of games. So
And they
I
played
I
week
think they
one
built a
last
good
year.
team. What was that?
Remember last year, week one, they played, and Devontae Adams went out and destroyed everybody. And it was like, oh, yeah, the Packers are going to win this division. The exact opposite happened, where the Vikings' number one wide receiver went out there and looked like, I mean, he looked like he was the best wide receiver in the NFL. Now, multiple people looked like that, but it was like, oh, they can't cover him. This team is legit, and I'm not a major Kirk fan, but Kirk Cousins has a new offense where it's designed around passing the football, and he's got the weapons. Now, I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to win MVP. I actually made my TikTok, and this I had interesting wording because I rewatched it when I made my prediction, and I said this was going to be the start of the Justin Jefferson MVP campaign. I said he wouldn't win, but his name will be brought up in that conversation. Because last year, like Cooper Cup obviously wasn't going to win, but people were like, "Hey, Cooper Cup MVP, like his name should be thrown in there because he's putting up that kind of stats." Justin Jefferson is going to have that type of impact on this offense because he's so good. And like this is the best trio I've pro yeah, I think this is the best trio I've ever seen in terms of weapons in the NFL. Now, this is not including quarterback. This is wide receiver one and two and running back. If you're including quarterback, there's some other teams that it's like, dude, you got, some crazy guys. But like wide receiver one is Justin Jefferson. I think is a top, I mean, he's top three. He's in the top three. He's in the number one tier with two other guys. Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen can be a wide receiver one on a lot of teams. He's probably like I think he's a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. Like back end top 20, but like he's really solid. And then you get Dalvin Cook, who again is, I believe he was like number 6 on our top 10 running back rankings, if I'm remembering correctly. He was in the top 7. I know for a fact. And it's just like that's crazy right there what you have. When you have superstars like that on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and you get to play against teams that, I'm sorry, Matt, should be easy wins in the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. People that don't know Matt is a 49ers fan. That's going to help. And now the Packers, the way that they're rebuilding, dude, they're going to be in a situation where they're like, oh, who are you going up against? And they're like, oh, we're playing Jordan Love and the Packers in 2 years from now. And you're like, oh, that's a win. Who else are you going up against? And you're like, oh, we're going against Justin Fields and the Bears. Justin Fields, he looks pretty good, but they still have no offensive line and nobody wants to join them in free agency. Then finally, oh, the Lions. You guys have a 1,000-yard rusher yet? Nope. All right. Sounds good to me. Like they're going to run this division for a while with the way that they've rebuilt. I think they've rebuilt perfectly. And they didn't do it with a blow up. Like they went out there and they were like, "Hey, let's get Kirk Cousins." And I think they're definitely I think they're definitely looking for other options at quarterback. I don't think it's something where they're looking at Kirk 10 years from now. I think they're just weighing, hey, maybe we draft a guy in the fourth round every other year because they drafted Kellen Mond. They ended up releasing him. Oh, accidentally opened up my camera. They ended up drafting Kellen Mond, but they're in a situation where it's like, hey, we have all the weapons. This is the time when you can bring in a new quarterback. Um, like so, if they draft a guy in the second round or something like that next year, I don't know who's going to be available in the second round. But I mean, this could be a situation where we're looking at a future dynasty, which I don't want to see because I'm a Ravens fan. I want the dynasty to be the Ravens. But my Super Bowl prediction this year was I did this on the only person that can verify this is Mike DeFran because he put out a poll. My Super Bowl prediction was Ravens Vikings. Like I have the Vikings going to the Super Bowl. That is my Super Bowl team. He's the only person that can verify that with the poll that I put it in. But that's the only place I've said my Super Bowl prediction. That's my prediction because I really believe in this offense and I really believe in because they have a pass rush. If you don't have a pass rush and you have a great offense, I don't believe in you as much. They have a pass rush which can get you past so many other teams. Like, oh, how do you beat the Rams? dude, just throw one good defensive lineman out there and you beat the Rams. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. So yeah, Vikings to the playoffs, book it. But I will add, yeah, they'll get close to the Super Bowl, and then Kirk Cousins will line up under the guard, and then Snap's gonna shoot behind him. If anyone remembers that play last year when fourth and goal, game on the line, season on the line, and Kirk walks up and lines up underneath the guard. That is unbelievable. I have never seen anything like that in an NFL game. It was hilarious. But yeah, I think that's going to do it. That was a long discussion on that division. I think it's very fair to have a long discussion on that division. Really interesting. But final kind of talking point here, and we can do this one kind of quick, but Dak Prescott is now injured. He's going to be out, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks. Also, they just didn't look good. They looked, okay, saying they
I
didn't
was
look
gonna
good
say,
is
does it matter?
nice.
Does it matter that he's injured? Because he looked horrible.
He looked so bad. That offense looked so bad. And I think a lot of people go, well, okay, they're playing against a great defense too. Dude, the Bucks have lost a lot of guys since they won the Super Bowl. That secondary is not the same. They're a little bit better than last year. Last year they had a ton of injuries, but they're not exactly there. They have some new faces. But dude, Dak, the whole team looked so bad. Besides like Micah Parsons. And even Diggs made a couple plays too,
Hey,
but
I
like
gotta say, Ezekiel Elliott looked good. All
Ezekiel
right,
Elliott did look good. That is very true.
that was it.
But it was just a rough game. Dalton Schultz actually looked all right too. But dude, so my question for you is: Are the Cowboys cooked? Because my answer is yes, for at least for this season. And it's really scary because not this year, but the next 2 years, you owe Dak Prescott $50 million in both of those years as cap hits, and you can't really add that contract. You kind of can, but it's not worth it to cut him. So you have 2 more years of Dak at $50 million. Right now, he is making $19 million in terms of his cap hit. This team's gonna fall apart. They're gonna completely fall apart. So I do not have a lot of faith in this Cowboys team, and it's really weird because heading into the season, I was just like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good spot. They lost the offensive lineman. Like, dude, they lost so many pieces in this game, it feels like. And they just look super like lethargic and just bad. Just really, really bad. The Niners completely shit the bed. And then the Cowboys came out and outdid them in in like the craziest possible way. So, dude, it was bad. Bro, they scored
It
three
was
points.
bad, but they lost to the Bucks.
Yes, but they weren't even competitive, and their quarterback got hurt. Like you get as a week one. So my uncle went to the game, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, I feel so bad for him because he's all hyped, like the season's starting, and it's like season's over. Look at that, 3 hours. Oh man, and that was it. That's what she wrote. So I don't have faith in this Cowboys team.
Yeah, the problem with the Dallas Cowboys is Jerry Jones. It starts at the top. The way that he manages this team is a disgrace to the NFL because he has no idea what he's doing. And every time that he needs a position, he goes out and grabs the flashy one. And every time he needs a flashy position, he goes out and grabs positions that he doesn't need. And he goes out and he pays guys like Dak Prescott. When Dak Prescott, the question was, hey, can he actually do it? And he just gave him the massive contract no matter what because he was like, oh, I really like this guy. And he goes completely on gut feeling. You're looking at this team. Matt, we were watching this game together. Who the hell are these other wide receivers? Like it seems like 2 years ago it was like, dude, Jerry, stop bringing the wide receivers. What are you doing? Like, I mean, we were even questioning the CD Lamb pick, even though we both loved CD Lamb. We were like, dude, you got Gallup and Cooper. Like, you need offensive line. Like, you need defensive line. You need edge rush. You need cornerbacks. And Jerry's like, got to get me a new 88. I like this guy. He's flashy. And then we're watching it this year, and you're like, dude, who's Houston? Who's Brown? I'm watching. I'm like, dude, throw Simi Fehoko out there. He can't be that bad compared to him. Simi Fehoko had the same amount of catches as CeeDee Lamb. Dude, what's going on there? Like, CeeDee was dropping passes. CeeDee was also the only player that it seemed like they could do anything with. In the passing game, Dalton Schultz was the check down every play, so like we couldn't see if he could, get to the next level. But that's kind of Dalton Schultz, is he's not a vertical threat like a Travis Kelsey or a Mark Andrews or Waller or something like that. He's a check down player. He's good, but like they're supposed to be built around the run. They have Mike McCarthy. Why is Mike McCarthy the head coach? I mean, that's another guy where it's like Jerry Jones is like, oh, I like this guy.
Dude, the most random head coach hire there ever was,
Dude,
right?
he's the only head coach that would accept a job from Jerry Jones because he's like, dude, I need a coaching job. Like, I wouldn't like if I'm a coach, I'm not coaching there. Like, there's no way I would do it because you'd be like, it would be exactly like coaching for can't remember his name, but the head coach, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns in draft day. Um, you know how the head coach is like, give me the quarterback, and he's like, no, you get this shitty quarterback that I gave you, and you're gonna like it. Like if you look at it from the head coach's perspective, he's like, this dude's a scrub. Like I don't want him. And instead he's like, here's a running back. He's like, dude, I don't need a running back. Like that's the situation of the Dallas Cowboys where they're like, Mike McCarthy, here's an obscene amount of wide receivers, but then we're also going to get rid of all of those wide receivers simultaneously. Because the problem with Gallup, I like Gallup. Gallup is always injured. So whenever people say, "Oh, that trio of the Dallas Cowboys," is like, dude, I don't know if they've ever played a game together. Maybe they've played one game together where it was like Amari, Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. They can't build a franchise. They can't win because Jerry Jones has no idea what he's doing in that front office. And again, I like a lot of their players. I love the Micah Parsons pick, but you're looking at it and you're like, okay, what are they doing? And why? Like they're supposed to have Dak Prescott, like just like Aaron Rodgers. Why did they not get somebody else? Dak Prescott isn't Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers is playing for the Cowboys, he's doing great. Why? Because he's got one guy that can get open. Dak Prescott very clearly needs multiple people. That has been something about his entire career. Is when other guys are hurt, it's like, oh, Dak's not playing very well. The run game, honestly, the run game looked pretty good, but they weren't doing it because every time they passed the ball, it went miserably because Dak Prescott, oh my, like we talked about, Russ didn't look very good. Like Russ kind of looked lost. Dak Prescott looked like he didn't know where he was. It was like, dude, is he
Bro,
even playing football?
bro, people talk about Trey Lance not looking good. Trey Lance was playing in a monsoon, and he looked better than Dak, bro. It was insane. The only thing I thought is like, did Dak get hurt before? I don't think he did. I really don't think he did
No, it
because that was
looked
the
like
only
he
thing I would
hit the
expect.
thumb on the helmet. It was like, dude, like it, because last year was supposed to be the recovery year. It was like, okay, Dak's had the full year. We're going to see. And we talked about Dak. It was like, hey, this is going to be the big year of like, can he prove it? That was not a good start. And a lot of people are going to look at this game, in 4 or 5 weeks, and it's like, oh, the Cowboys are 1-4, whatever it is. And they're like, man, but if they had Dak, if he hadn't gotten hurt in that first game, and it's like, dude, I was worried for the Cowboys after the first half. Like it was like, wow, this is bad. And they had, I mean, the wide receivers were dropping passes. Like, and Dak was missing a ton of throws that he should have absolutely made. It was horrible. Mike McCarthy won't be fired very quickly because, like, Dak Prescott getting hurt probably saved Mike McCarthy his job. Um, Kellen Moore, I don't know what it is. Like, I
Dude,
like
he's
Kellen
most
Moore.
dude. So Cowboys fans hate him. I gotta bring this up, and
Yeah,
then people around like you'll hear like NFL things. Do you remember that graphic we saw in the offseason that said
yeah.
that Kellen Moore is a better play caller than Kyle Shanahan?
I like Kellen Moore, but I don't like him that much.
I think he
Um,
sucks. And if you
Dude,
ask
I think
Cowboys fans hate him. Hate him, dude.
here's my bet. Here's my bet. I think he, I think he's a very good football mind, and I think he can be a really good play caller. I think Mike McCarthy is probably a guy that says design all these plays, and Kellen Moore probably gives him plays, and he's like, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking," and then Mike McCarthy goes, "I'm going to give you the worst possible situation to run this." Like that triple reverse, Mike McCarthy was probably like, "I like that. Let's do that." It was like I'm watching it, and I'm like, why would you run this? This was horrible. Like, so I feel like Kellen Moore, he can design some good plays. I don't know the hierarchy of how everything, goes from head coach to coordinator to the quarterback is different with every team. So maybe it is Kellen Moore. But I like some of the plays that he designs. But again, they also have a lot of plays where you're looking at, and you're like, why would you do that there? That makes no sense. Mike McCarthy, the fact that he still has a job makes the only explanation I have for Mike McCarthy is no one else will work for Jerry Jones. Why would you? I mean, that's probably why they kept Jason Garrett there for so long. Was because like it was very obvious that Jason Garrett was terrible, but like, dude, Mike McCarthy's probably worse. Like they're gonna lose
He
Mike
might be.
McCarthy, and who are they gonna get? They're gonna hire Greg Roman. Like they're gonna bring in Hugh Jackson, right? Like they're gonna bring in the bottom of the barrel. Mike McCarthy was already the bottom of the barrel. Like they brought him in, and like Cowboys fans were like Super Bowl winner. It was like, bro, the Packers won in spite of Mike McCarthy,
Yeah.
and now he's supposed to coach Cooper Rush, and it's going to like, dude, and he's gonna get a pass because like, oh, his quarterback got hurt. It's like, dude, no, don't give him a pass. Jerry Jones just step down as general manager, have someone fix the dumpster fire. The Cowboys have the young assets where in 5 years they could be really good, right? They keep Micah Parsons, Diggs develops, they have CeeDee Lamb. You keep those three players, boom, and you have a competent general manager, you can have a great team in 5 years. But the problem is Jerry's like, give me that wide receiver, man. But next year it'll be all like Jerry's probably looking at this draft and he's like, I really need a tight end real quick. Like he always needs the position he doesn't need, right? It's horrible.
Yeah, I don't, and I think they're going to be cooked for this year. But to wrap it up, I think we should do this. Honestly, I think we should do this every single week. So I have a list of all of the games from week one up right now. I'm going to go through. I'm going to give just the first thing that comes to my mind about the game or about the teams or whatever it is. You know, it could be a player. I'm just going to go through them. Maybe I won't go through every single game, but just like the takes that I have. So just like rapid
Let's
fire
do
week one
let's do
takes.
all the games. Just say the game, you give a take, I give a take, like or statement. Quickly statement.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Bills Rams. Rams offensive line looks absolutely abysmal.
Stafford's fine. Rams offensive line is terrible.
Yeah, I think that's the big one there. Eagles Lions. Eagles offense is incredibly weird. Devontae Smith has 0 catches. AJ Brown is an absolute animal, and I think the Eagles offense is a lot more legit than I thought.
To the person who compared AJ Brown and Christian Kirk's deals as being equal, shut up.
Bears 49ers. I don't want to talk about it.
Trey Lance isn't an NFL starting quarterback.
Oh yeah, that's your take.
I'm kidding. Don't
Um,
overreact.
yeah, that's fair. It's a monsoon. I just don't want to talk about that one. Steelers Bengals. Steelers defense is exactly what I thought it was going to be like, and the Bengals offensive line is worse than last year.
Yeah, if TJ Watt doesn't get hurt, this team could win the division.
Patriots Dolphins. The Patriots suck. The Patriots are so bad, dude. Their offense is going to be a complete joke. If you have a fantasy defense and they're playing the Patriots, you're winning your week. I'll tell you that.
Mac Jones is not going back to the Pro Bowl anytime soon.
All right, let's go. Browns Panthers. Both these teams are going to be sneaky meh. They're gonna be
Sneaky
500 teams
Mac.
that are just constantly in games. Yeah, you like that
If
sneaky meh?
Sneaky Matt is a top tier phrase to describe them. But if they don't utilize Christian McCaffrey, they are going to be sneaky Matt.
Okay. Next one. Colts
Sneaky
Texans.
Matt.
Dude, what are the Colts doing, bro? They come out with these ridiculous rosters every year. Oh, we got a new quarterback. Oh, we got a new quarterback. Oh, we got a new quarterback. They just need to draft someone at this point. Because, come on, week one. Oh, we got Matt Ryan. You tied to the Texans, bro. Come on.
I'm gonna quote a very famous actress when she goes, "Come on, Bert, run the dang ball. You got Jonathan Taylor in the best line in football." And it's just like they're like Matt Ryan's dropping back, and you're like, dude, just run it. Just run the ball. Punch it in.
All right, next Saints Falcons. MT's back. MT is back, baby.
I called it.
Yeah, you called that one. Ravens Jets. Ravens went ugly. I mean, I don't know what to say. There's not. I told you I barely saw this game because it was nothing. There's nothing that was happening.
um, Lamar to Bateman actually looks like it could be a legitimate connection, and Bateman being their deep threat is scary.
Uh, Jags Commanders. I have two. One, T-Law looks like he's taking that step up. Two, Curtis Samuel, 11 targets, 8 catches. That's interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, a guy that we talked about did not pan out like we thought he would in week one. Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne is Travis Brick for hands. Like this dude was terrible.
Did six touches too. Rough day.
Oh,
Rough day.
mm,
Packers Vikings. We already talked about this one. The Vikings need to just clean house and get a receiver, bro. This is a joke. It's a joke of a roster when you look at who's at quarterback.
yeah. Justin Jefferson is, I don't want to say it, but he's the best wide receiver in football.
Giants Titans. I'm gonna do two. The Titans suck. Like their roster's not good at all. But I'm really into what the Giants are building, and I didn't think I would ever say that. I've made fun of Daniel Jones so many times, but they're gonna be legit in a couple years, and I'm excited to kind of see how they transform their team over the next, I'll say, 3 years.
Yeah, this is the best Saquon has looked, I think, in his career. I think he looked just as good as he ever did. And then the Titans, dude, give it to Derrick Henry. Like, just give it to Derrick Henry. Stop bringing in, the backup running back and calling all these passing plays. Like, dude,
What
you have Ryan Tannehill
what about the tight end run, tight end around on fourth down or
on
third down or whatever it was?
fourth and one, and they go Chuma. Oh gosh, it's the tight end out of Maryland, who ran the 4.5 40, and they go tight end around. Dude, you have Derrick Henry, the closest thing to a sure thing from 1 yard out, and it's not like he was averaging 1 yard per carry. He was running the ball well. He actually looked amazing, I thought. They just kept getting holding penalties, which really reduced his yardage. He was running through everybody on that Giants defense. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is scary to play against. And then it was like holding on the tight end on the opposite side of the field. And you're like, dude, just like sit down, play, I don't know, crisscross applesauce and just let him work.
Raiders Chargers, new faces, same story. We talked about that one a lot,
You
but
work
it's
on that? That was a good one. That was well prepared. Um, uh, Fire Brandon Staley. I don't care.
even though they win, people are not gonna like
Yeah.
that. This
Well,
is there's nothing to say about this game. Chiefs Cardinals. Okay, one, if you are still questioning the Chiefs' ability to win, then you just need to find a new sport to watch because you are obviously not picking up what's going on. Oh, they lost Tyreek. Are they going to be good? Yes, they're going to be good. They're going to be good. And then the Cardinals fire Cliff. I'll give you that one.
bring back the homework clause.
Was it
Get
double
Kyler
XP
in the
weekend?
film room. Dude, Kyler looked
Um,
bad.
Buccaneers, Cowboys. The Cowboy season is over.
The Cowboy season was over before Dak got hurt.
Fair enough. And the final one, Broncos, Seahawks. I think this is a prime example of what week one football looks like. Random win. They probably shouldn't have, but I'll tell you this: the Seahawks played extremely hard football. So they might win some games like this throughout the year, just like sneaky wins, not being good, but coming through and like just playing really hard and kind of catching a team off guard. So I'm expecting to see this from the Seahawks. I mean, this is a Pete Carroll team. Like you're going to see that always. So
Yeah, and then I think I got to go to the Broncos. If this team wants to win the Super Bowl, which I think they are fully capable of doing, it can't be a split backfield at all.
yeah, all right, man. I think it's going to do it. Guys, thanks for hopping on the stream. I know we had a few people in and out of the stream, but we're going to be going live every single Monday after the Monday Night Football game. So stay tuned. We're going to just be kind of going over all the games. I like the rapid fire idea. That was kind of fun, even though it was like almost 10 minutes of it. But like you got it. We all got to say a little piece. So, or we both got to say a little piece, but I think it's going to do it. So hopefully next week we get a lot of good football again. I thought the games this weekend were really fun. Couple like parts where it got a little bit dull, but then you get some insane endings to those games. So maybe not the best Monday night or Sunday night football back-to-back combo because this game was kind of boring. And next week we have Packers Bears. So Sunday night football schedule's got to get better than that. That is just bad. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you for hopping on, and hopefully we see you next week after the Monday night football game. So we will see you guys then, and have a good night.